The London system is a flexible and easy-to-learn chess opening that works well against almost any defense. Its key strength lies in its solid, pyramid-like pawn structure, which gives white a strong center and allows for quick development. To enter the London system, you begin with d4, followed by bishop f4 and e3. You can vary the move order, such as delaying e3 and playing knight f3 instead, depending on the response you face. As mentioned earlier, what opening you're playing against doesn't really matter, but the most popular response from black is d5 and knight f6. If black offers a bishop trade, you retreat your bishop to g3. If black captures the bishop, you take back with your h-pawn, which opens the h-file, a great asset for future attacks, especially if you plan to castle queenside and launch a kingside offensive later on. However, black's better response is to avoid capturing the bishop and simply castle instead. You then continue your development with bishop d3. If black plays c5, you respond with c3, which is the best move in this situation, as it completes your pyramid structure. From here, your plan is to develop your other knight, castle, and potentially place a knight on e5 or prepare to strike with e4. A common scenario is when black places their queen on b6. In this case, you should play queen b3, offering a queen trade, which is favorable for you. Now, let's explore some lines that could surprise you when building your setup, as many opponents will recognize your intention to play the London system and will try to punish it. It's important to know how to counter these attempts. One specific line arises when after d4, black plays knight f6, and then, following bishop f4, strikes with c5, trying to trade pawns early. In response, you play e3. If black trades pawns, you continue with knight f3 and c3. Although you miss the e-pawn, your development remains solid. The middle game plan will shift from controlling the center to creating pressure on the queen side. If black knows what they're doing, they might play queen b6. Don't be scared by this. Simply play knight c3. If black takes the pawn with their queen, you respond with knight b5, threatening a fork on c7. Black must play knight d5 to cover the square. At this point, you can either play rook b1, leading to a back-and-forth queen maneuver that ends in a draw, or retreat your bishop. If black tries to kick your knight with a6, that's a mistake. You can respond with rook b1, and after black takes your pawn on a2 and retreats to b2, you strike with c4. This move is powerful for several reasons. Black can't take your knight, as you would win their rook for free, and if the black knight retreats, you can fork on c7, winning the rook again. Now let's dive into some tactical traps that often catch black off guard. The first trap comes from a frequently played position and is easy for black to overlook. You follow the classic development. Black will play c5, bishop d6, forcing you to retreat your bishop. They will likely castle, and you may end up in this specific position. If black plays queen e7, you play knight e5. Your opponent might want to exchange knights, so they play knight d7. You take the knight, and if black recaptures with the bishop, you take on d6. When black recaptures with the queen, you then take on c5. Here's where it gets interesting. If black recaptures the pawn with their queen, you sacrifice your bishop on h7 and follow up with queen h5 check. Black brings their king back, and you play knight e4. Now, black can't take the pawn without losing their queen, so they're forced to retreat. If black plays queen e7, you play knight g5, threatening an unstoppable checkmate unless black sacrifices their queen to capture the knight. The second trap is particularly hard to spot and arises against the king's Indian defense. You go for your pyramid setup with d4, bishop f4, e3, knight f3, knight bd2, c3, and bishop c4, while keeping an eye on your opponent's moves. If your opponent follows the typical king's Indian setup and plays rook e1, you once again sacrifice your bishop, this time on f7. When black captures, you deliver a knight g5 check, followed by knight e5, trapping black's queen. In summary, the London system is a simple yet effective chess opening for white. Its solid pawn structure and flexibility make it highly adaptable, and it works well against most defenses. You don't need to dive deep into theory, making it an ideal opening for players who prefer a straightforward, reliable approach. Additionally, it contains several tactical traps that can surprise even experienced opponents, especially when they respond with popular defenses like the King's Indian.